What was your strangest experience whilst attending a sleepover? The parents announced their divorce. I went to sleep in a basement room with 6 guys. When I woke up I was alone in the house. During the night everyone got food poisoning and the family took the kids to the hospital. But because I did not eat any of whatever it was I was fine and the family forgot about me. Watching porn with 3 other dudes. All of my friends had blowout sleepover parties, so I begged my parents to let me have a big sleepover party for my 9th birthday. What I did not consider is that I had friends across different cliques. When everyone was at the party, I quickly realized that a lot of them did not get along with each other. A couple friends from Little League could not stand the kids from my neighborhood. One friend who was 2 years older hated everyone else. Friends who did not like sports were appalled at how many of my friends did like sports, and how much I liked sports. One of my neighborhood friends stripped down and ran naked laps in the living room. That led to at least 2 kids calling their parents in the middle of the night asking to go home. Others who stayed did not want to be around the others, so they found other places to sleep. I think someone busted into my dad's home office and slept underneath his desk. Some kids, maybe just one kid, ransacked the freezer for ice cream and made a mess of it in the kitchen. One kid got food poisoning and was puking on off all night. Meanwhile, I tried to not play favorites, but I was incredibly frustrated and eventually just locked myself in my bedroom, and let everyone else fight each other. It was a weird night, and I never had another party. Edit some grammar. Was a sleepover at a boy's house, so I was sleeping on the couch after a late night of watching old Stargate episodes recorded on VHS. I hear his dad slam into the house in the middle of the night and start screaming for his wife to bring him his pills. I squeeze my eyes shut and pretend to be asleep. Before long he is screaming right in front of the couch. I still do not react, and he grabs me by the hair, wrenches my head up, and has a handgun in my face. He screams for his pills again before stopping all of a sudden, muttering, "I thought you were my wife," and stumbling off to another part of the house. His wife and I had a similar shade and length of hair. I returned to pretending I was asleep and never mentioned it or slept over at that friend's house again. When we were like 11, my best friend, who is still my best friend, beat the shit out of me for waking her up in the middle of the night because I felt sick. She was like the sweetest girl ever and she was literally punching me in the head. I just sat there and cried and went back to sleep, and she remembered none of it the next morning. When I was about 9 I slept over at my cousin's house, and I could not sleep. It was about 3 a.m. Everyone in the house was asleep, and out of nowhere my cousin's mom, my aunt, walks into our room. I have known her since birth. Nice woman, not especially close. Anyway, she comes into our room, and just stands in the doorway for a couple of minutes. At first I thought she was checking on us. Then too much time had passed, so I thought she was just watching us sleep because we were cute children or something. Then the strange bit, she walked into and started fumbling with my bed sheets, like rearranging, as if it was tangled or I was uncovered or something, but I was not. This carried on for a few minutes, whilst I laid down pretending to be asleep, but secretly really creeped out. When I looked at the clock, I realized she'd been doing it for about 10 minutes. Then after a while she got up, and went back to bed. To a really awkward encounter when I was 12. 3 of us were sleeping over at a friend's house for his birthday. Then in the morning he found a pack of his mom's cigarettes. After she promised to quit, and was apparently smoke-free for a year, he started yelling at his mom for an hour, in tears. And it turned out she'd never quit, and just smoked. In the car, the rest of us just sat uncomfortably in the living room, waiting for breakfast. It was 5 a.m. I was so drunk and high I went into the bedroom of my friend's parents, woke them up, spoke with them in Bosnian. They are American and we are in France, and I puked in their garbage. When I was about 14 or so I went to a slumber party with about 3 other girls. I fell asleep early, woke up covered in minty fresh toothpaste all over my face. Sleeping bag, the carpet, you name it. Apparently when I was sleeping someone had the grand idea to fill my hand up with shaving cream and then wake me up so that I would smear the shaving cream everywhere. Only they had no shaving cream, hence the toothpaste. Also they got carried away and just decided to cover my face in the toothpaste and my hands as well, hence the giant mess. Also, toothpaste stings when worn externally as makeup. A recent repost of mine fits the bill. Didn't he get a lot of attention last time because the thread was small? That would be my friend Derek, or perhaps better known as the first and last sleepover I ever had with Derek. We met during the after-school program and were best pals. Derek was a tad shy and awkward looking. He had these big glasses and a thick bush of red hair, but he had some semblance of status among our peer group. He was quite knowledgeable on obscure facts, which made him a valuable asset during quiz time. When the teachers would quiz us and shower the winners with candy, he was adept at making paper airplanes, and had a 200-page book of airplanes one could make. It was fun trying the many hundreds of styles. He once made a plane that arced over the gym we were sitting in. Even the teachers were impressed to the point they didn't even bother to discipline him. So one day Derek, a friend from school named Joseph, and I had a sleepover at Derek's house. Derek was somewhat hesitant, but we were persistent and he gave in. That should have been a red flag. After all, what kid does not want to have his friends over for a sleepover? Derek lived in a small ranch home that was somewhat run down in a lower-class neighborhood close to the elementary school. Things at the sleepover went fairly normally. We left, screwed around by finding junk in some nearby fields to make stuff out of, and grabbed tacos at Taco Bell nearby. However, as night went on, things took a turn for the worse. Up until that point, Derek's mother had been the only adult in the house. The only other family member was Derek's little brother, who, despite being 3 years younger, joined us in our sleepover. He was not half bad for a second grader, at least on the coolness scale. Derek had taught him many paper airplanes, and he had a cool RC car collection. So the three of us were sitting in the basement, and we heard the door open. Derek's father had come home from wherever he worked. He barked some sort of command, and Derek's mother told him that Derek had friends over. That was apparently a problem, even though they had discussed it several days earlier. As we would learn from the context of the argument, a fight broke out. Derek ran out of the room and locked the door that led to the central area in the basement. We heard some screaming and then crying. Derek's younger brother came running downstairs holding his head. His mother was now screaming at the father. Derek comforted his brother, and without a second beat, we were moving a heavy desk that was downstairs. Derek and his little brother had practiced this maneuver before, it had seemed, as their movements were swift and choreographed. Joseph and I were confused and only got in the way. First they took the TV down, then moved the heavy desk by pushing it, and then they put the TV and some heavy books on top of it. I was reeled into it as well. I asked why they did this. They said that their stepfather would come down and yell at them and hit them. I was scared now, and so was my friend. I had no phone, no anything. We were trapped downstairs. All I wanted was to order some pizza and for everything to quiet down. But it didn't. The fighting was a constant source of annoyance. Things would die down, and then something would rile them back up. An object would occasionally hit the wall. After some convincing from Joseph and I, it finally hit Derek that this was indeed not normal, and that something should be done about it. We decided to leave out of the basement window which led to the street. It took us nearly 10 minutes to remove the chicken wiring that surrounded the basement well. Our escape was made quicker when we could hear the stepdad beating down on the door. We escaped and ran as fast as we could to the nearby field, hiding for nearly 15 minutes before we got enough courage to find a payphone and call my parents with the change I had left from dinner. I met them by the Taco Bell, and we went home. During the phone call I had told my parents what had happened and how scared I was. My father came and picked us up without asking us any other questions. When we arrived at my house, 2 police officers were there, and he took Derek and his brother away in a police car. We wrote down some statements for the police, and Joseph and I spent the rest of the night at our house. My father bought us Papa John's pizza with triple meat. We played Majora's Mask until we fell asleep. It was awkward though. We were not actually really playing, and we felt really really bad about Derek and his little brother. It was on both of our minds. It haunted me until Monday. The next Monday, Joseph and I were brought into the principal's office and made to write other statements. A school counselor came and asked us both questions about Derek, what he was like, if he had ever said anything to us about his family. We answered the best we could. We did not actually know anything. No, we had never seen any bruises. Derek did not have any anger or emotional issues, and he never smelled funny. The only thing that was odd was that he sometimes had messy hair or that his glasses were scratched. We never saw Derek again, ever. Knowing what I know today, I assumed my parents called the police. The only other detail I ever learned was from a little girl who lived on the same street where Derek used to live. She said that the police came to the house and then she never saw Derek again. And after the sleepover, Derek was not present in the after-school program at all. Since he was in a different class than Joseph and I opted to sneak over to the other classroom, where I found the teacher at her desk. Having been starved of knowledge, I demanded some answers. The teacher knew something had happened, but she did not even know what it was. So, she told me was that Derek would no longer be around anymore and sent me back to my classroom, not even having the heart to punish me for lying to my teacher about going to the bathroom and for abusing the hall pass for my own needs. It was the tone of voice adults use on children when they do not want to show them the gritty truth of the world. We did not hear anything from Derek and we did not expect to. 2 weeks later, we got a package sent to the school, addressed to my teacher, with a note to give it to me. After some initial confusion and some reluctance and debate at the office, the teachers realized what it was and sent it down to me. When I opened it, inside was the very book Derek owned. I almost cried when I saw it. I had always been jealous of that book he had bought. It had meant a lot to Derek. His mother had bought it when the Scholastic Book Fair had come to town many months ago. That day after school, we ran though and saw all of the planes we had made. I think Derek wanted the magic of the paper airplanes to continue, but without him around to give it that spark of energy and enthusiasm, it was not that long-lasting. But it had been obvious what Derek had felt. I imagine, for the first time in his childhood, he had had a decent, normal relationship with normal kids and he had enjoyed it. Joseph, the kids at the after-school program and I were the golden era of his childhood to that point, and he wanted to give me the book as thanks. After all that, the after-school program was a lot more depressing. Joseph and I tried to find some other kids to play with, but people were never as truly interested in the same things as Derek and I were. To this day I still wonder what happened to Derek. He was a kid who cared about his little brother, and had the shitty luck of growing up discovering the evils of the world from an early age. Up until that point, the only association I had for child abuse, domestic violence, was the book a child called it, and that was only what was on the news. As the book was too graphic for a kid my age, I copy-pasted this story from an earlier thread, so I added a few more details and touched up some grammar because it got popular. Only ever had one sleepover, because my parents were a bit overprotective when it came to me being away from home for too long. After a lot of convincing, I got my parents to let me have a sleepover at my friend's house. Got there at 8, played some PlayStation 1, watched a movie, ate snacks. At about 11 we both laid down on the floor to get to sleep, and just as I was dozing off, the phone rang. It was his friends from school. They were going to some laser tag party at midnight and wanted him to go. He excited told them yes. I was so pumped to go, as I did never been to laser tag before. I jump up and start to get ready, when he asks me what I am doing. When I mention that I did not want to wear PJs out, he informs me that I was not invited, just him. His friend's parents picked him up about 20 minutes later. I spent an awkward night alone in my best friend's house with his parents. Too long didn't he read. Friend goes out with other friends while I am sleeping over at his house, leaves me alone with his weird parents. When everyone was going to sleep, the sleeping arrangement was our host. The only girl there was sleeping in a room with 2 guys on the floor with her and another guy in the bed. I and 2 other guys were supposed to sleep out in her den. One of the guys did not want to sleep in the den, so he bothered the group in the bedroom for 2 hours before finally telling him to duck off. He then broke down the door to the room and slept in the hallway right outside the door. WTF. My sister and I were at our friend's house for a sleepover. We were eating dinner with her family and the topic of our sleeping arrangements came up. Seeing as this was a sleepover, I assumed we would all be sleeping in the same room. Her stepdad on the other hand had other thoughts. He chimed in with, "Why do you want to sleep in the same room? What are you going to do? Touch each other?" We were in grade 6. This happened at my 14th birthday party. My cat had been missing for several days. We figured he had walked off to die as he was very sick with a brain tumor. He did not decided to walk into the woods. He decided to die in my crawl space. We happened to notice the smell at my party. We found where he was and opened up a drawer that goes to the crawl space and we greeted with a very smelly dead cat. Several of my friends threw up from the smell. Everyone still remembers when we found dead Midnight. Midnight was the name of my cat. Lingerie-clad pillow fights, of course. I was the strange one, crippling anxiety when I was young. At about 1 a.m. every time I would start to freak out. Thoughts like my parents' house will burn down and the firemen would not know where I am, or they could move away while I am gone. I would continue freak out until finally asking my friends' parents to call my parents to pick me up. Consider subscribing if you enjoyed this video and if you want to see more of Reddit Universe.